Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Worship podcast. Thank you so much for joining me every week and for sharing the episode, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you very much for being loyal followers. I really am very grateful for what God has done and how much of the word has gone out. So thank you. Thank you very much for being partners. Also, for those that financially have supported us until now, thank you very much. And if you haven't done so, you can message me at lauracina.malvina@gmail.com. The reason why we ask for support is we are hosting presence camps all around. It doesn't matter. I believe they need to be all over the world. And we are looking for people that would like to support us to be able to host the young adults and the youth. I believe there needs to be a legacy of this move. The Lord is shifting how he wants to be hosted. And I think there's need to be equipping and teaching for that new wineskin. We need pioneers and we need to raise a new leadership to do that. So if you want to support us, again, you can message me at lauracina.malvina@gmail.com. Thank you so much for Inside Now. Inside Now is a platform I use to host the podcast, and I'd like to thank them because it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for them. I believe in partnership and the body coming together, even though we all do different things. So I'm very grateful for them. Well, without further delay, I would like today to continue on our series of stewardship. Last week, I started talking about, okay, what is stewardship and what are the things that the Lord is asking us to steward in these coming days, in this coming season. The Lord is asking us to raise an army for the end times. And how do we steward that? How do we train them? How do we disciple them? How do we equip them? The Lord is looking for a place to dwell. A place where his manifest presence will be hosted and will be the main focus. So how are we stewarding not just the people that have been assigned to us? How do we steward our finances? How do we steward ourselves? How do we steward the presence of God? So I started last week, it was episode the 44, where I started talking about stewardship. And today I'm going to continue with that subject. Some previous episodes, I have covered some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. I think episode 35 has a lot of that content, but I want to put it in perspective because we are in a huge transition. We just entered the first month of the Hebrew calendar. If you watch the show, you know I will talk about timing because in order to do what God wants, there are seasons. There are seasons of the prophets. There are seasons where God went silent. There are seasons where God brought them into the desert. There's seasons when they go into the promised land. I believe this year, 5785 in the Hebrew calendar, 2025 in the Greco-Roman calendar, it's important because God is doing a new thing. He's been preparing us for this. But can you perceive it? Can you steward that new thing? A lot of the time we want to steward the new with the old pattern, and that doesn't work. So today I'm going to talk about that stewardship because I believe this is the time when we have to really ask the Lord, how do you want us to handle this? What are the things that need to change? We don't want familiarity, traditions to keep us from the new or from aborting what God is doing. So I'm going to be talking about stewardship today. So if I were to give a title to this podcast, I would say the stewardship of the presence. And I'm going to talk about 4 different characters: King Saul, King David, Abinadab, and Obed-Edom. The reason why I chose those 4 is because in the book of 1 Samuel, you're going to see a lot of scripture on how the Ark of the Covenant was handled and the impact to those individuals. It's personal. So I want to talk about stewardship of the presence of God, meaning even if let's say you're not part of the camps, there is a stewardship when you come in and financially support us, where that needs to be stewarded properly. And we take that very serious because the way we handle that will determine the outcome of the camps. So even though some people are not there, they will benefit out of the seeds of what happens. So that's what today I want to talk about, stewardship of that presence and who does it. If you look at the New Testament model, the apostles went out there and they raised different churches, plant different churches, and not buildings, but they build communities of people that were followers of the way. The Jesus Christ was the focus. And in that stewardship, a lot of people gave money. A lot of people take care of the widows. A lot of people there are different roles within the body, and those roles have to be steward. So finances are huge stewardship in the New Testament. There is always an extravagant generosity of the Macedonians because they were very poor, but they had such joy because they knew that God was in that move. So that is part of what the new in this movement is all about. How are we going to steward the presence of God? And it's going to require different people to do different things. So today I want to talk about these 4 characters and see where that takes us. I wanted to do a series on stewardship because I believe the Lord is going to ask us, what did you do with what I gave you? I gave you money. What did you do with it? I gave you people. What did you do with it? I gave you land. What did you do with it? I gave you a nation. What did you do with it? Okay, so for us, especially for those intercessors out there, what are we praying about? Are we praying the will of God, or are we praying what we want? So stewardship will determine the condition of a people. If we look outside right now, we don't look very well in the Western world. So what is it that we need to look at? What is not right today so that we can change that to steward the presence of God within our nations, within our families, within the environment that we're in, looking for change, because presence changes everything. You guys hear me say that over and over and over again, all over, every episode. If we have the presence of God, I promise you, you will not stay the same. You will be better. Now, transition happens, but you need to change. And sometimes people, the more you fight the change, the harder it gets. Right now, I know there are a lot of people that are in serious transition, separation from family, separation from friends, illnesses, and a lot of things happening. And the reason for that is sometimes it's the only way we will shift where we are. It's the only thing that will force you to move locations or get a different job or do something different. And God allows sometimes even financial stress in order for people to decide, what am I going to do in order to honor God, not to honor the problem. Okay. So I think that's what God is speaking right now. So stewardship, it becomes really important. Well, let's define stewardship. I think I did it on the other show. Stewardship is when you have something that you have to take care of. Okay. Now in God's kingdom, we can redefine stewardship by saying is taking care of things the way God said. So a lot of the times in our societal values, well, I need to do this because this is the people that I'm taking care of, or this is where I need to put things. And God never said, put your stuff in there. A lot of people that we are helping, sometimes they don't even honor God. And we are putting a lot of our resources there. So the Lord is going to say, why do you spend all that money over there when you could be spending it hosting my presence? So those are some of the questions we need to ask ourselves. And I challenged people last week, what are you doing with what God gave you? What is God saying? Not what I'm saying. What is God saying to you to do with your money, with your relationships, with your house, with your children, with your family, with your nation? What are you praying? Are you praying God's will, or are you praying what we want as Christians? So that was a challenge I placed last week. So today we are going to talk about stewardship of the ark, stewardship of the presence. Now, I have many shows on this. You can go back to show 35 and previous to that. What happens to the ark throughout the Old Testament, first book of First Samuel. Read it. It's an amazing book. But today, I want to talk about these four characters. So first of all, you have to understand that the Ark of the Covenant was captured by the Philistine because of the errors of Eli and his sons in First Samuel. You can go read it. Stewardship of the Ark incorrectly captured the presence, and for 40 years, King Saul had no ark. So a lot of the times you say, well, he was doing worship, he was killing animals, he was doing this, he was doing that, but there was nothing to worship because they did not have the ark. And in the Old Testament, no ark, no presence. So you can go through the motions and God's not even in the house. Okay, so that is an example of stewarding something that God's not in it. Actually, even when God spoke to him through Samuel, he didn't listen. Okay, so first of all, I would like to call this how we steward the presence of God. And the first character I'm going to talk about is King Saul. King Saul was a very indifferent man who neglected the value of the presence of God. No, it wasn't his fault that they lost the ark. The ark, it was Eli's son, which was the priesthood didn't do right. And the presence of the Lord, Ichabod, the presence, the glory has left. And sometimes people get so comfortable with their routine and what they do every day, they haven't even noticed that God is not in their midst. As I get a lot of phone calls on a daily basis of people that ask me, well, how come God hasn't answered my question? How come God hasn't answered my prayers? Well, first of all, where is God in the problem? Where is God in your situation? And if he's not in it, then you need to find out where he's at. You need to refocus. So for us to pray and pray and pray and hope that he shows up, it's different. You need to pray the will of God for your situation, and it may require major shift. So King Saul is gone nuts, lost his mind. It's a mind issue, by the way. Anything that exalts itself above God, not a problem. He had fear of man. A lot of people are going through troubles in this season because they have fear of men. Okay, not fear of the Lord, fear of men. That was King Saul. King Saul was looking for the approval of the people. He was the king that the people put there. He felt that pressure. And what you see is a nation with a spiritual decline. Okay, so you have one guy who doesn't understand. Samuel was a great man of God. He was his prophet, and he kept telling him, "Don't do that. Don't seek the medium. Don't go to the other things." But he was desperate for an answer, and sometimes we do the same. God has left the situation, but we continue manipulating it in order for it to turn out the way we think. Oh, the sheep looks good. The Lord says, eliminate the enemy, everything in it. Everything in it. I have stories I can tell you being in places where God says, clean it all out, but they can't help it. They want to save a little this, a little that. And only in a matter of time, everything falls apart. That's what happened to King Saul. So there was an indifference to God's presence. He didn't realize he didn't have the ark. He had no desire to reclaim it. He was afraid of Goliath. David had to come and help him out. So if he has to go confront the Philistine to get that ark, he probably is going to he didn't do it. Okay. So my advice is, where is God in your situation? Is the presence of God in your midst, even in the trauma? Where is God? And ask the Lord, what does he want to do with that problem you have? If you're waiting for healing and he hasn't manifested, if you're waiting, remember, he already died. He already took care of it. That's what the cross is all about. Okay. So we want to be in God's timing, in God's will. Okay, a lot of us are in a different calendar. We need to reset the time. What is God saying to us? That matters. And how you honor that will determine the outcome of things. Well, we know the results of King Saul. He had an indifference. He didn't notice the presence wasn't there. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. When the Lord tells him to obey, he doesn't obey. So it's not like God's not talking to him. Well, the spirit went into his head. He despised honoring God in the way God wanted. And we see it with his own daughter later on. It's a political spirit that comes into places. This is what we do. Don't change it. And people get really vicious and really ugly when others have a passion for the Lord. So King Saul was indifferent, neglected the presence, and disobeyed God. So the stewardship of the presence of God during King Saul's 40 years of reign was very little. He went through the motions, but he was not aware that God was not in his kingdom. Okay, so that's one example of poor stewardship. The second part I would like to address is not the presence have gone, and there is an episode on this that takes you the journey of where the ark has been. Ark was captured by the Philistines. It's moved around, and now it's in the house of Abinadab. Abinadab was a priest. He is there. He is the presence needed a place. There is a place, Beth Shemesh, and like I said, I have an episode on this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it's been in different places, and every time the people try to be irreverent in Beth Shemesh, they're just looking into it. People die. There's a history of irreverence until it gets to the house of Abinadab. Finally, it stays in that house for 20 years. And I would like to bring you, for those that like the scriptures on the screen, we have 1 Samuel chapter 7. So the men of Kiriath Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord. They brought it into Abinadab. Remember, it goes to Beth Shemesh. It could be in different places, and things haven't gone well. And I read the scriptures in 1 Samuel. It's a great book of this journey. From Shiloh all the way to here after captured by the Philistines. And they brought it to Abinadab's house on the hill and consecrated Eleazar, his son, to guard the ark of the Lord. Well, you say, well, they did a great job. They consecrated Eleazar, and we are all ready. That presence was there for 20 years. No impact, no result, no nothing. Well, it's better than Saul. Saul didn't have the ark. Abinadab had it in his house. Imagine what it is to have the presence of God parked in your house. Well, that came from the Philistine. Dagon has died, collapsed a few times. And now he is in the house of Abinadab. For 20 years, there is no transformation whatsoever in the house of Abinadab. I want to remind you that Uzzah, the man who dies later, was his son. I believe Abinadab became so familiar with the ark, and the ark is here, and the presence is here, and it's okay. So there is presence. But the familiarity without fruit is what happens in the house of Abinadab. You know how many times God comes into a place, but this is what we do every day. I've been in churches where the presence of God, you can feel it starting to move. And as soon as the program starts, we quenched it. Or we go do something else. Or we start talking about something else. The familiarity of what happens on everyday activity becomes routine. And there will be no fruit. It doesn't mean you don't have presence. It means you have it. I was in a church once, and I had a vision of watching the ark, not the ark, but the throne room being wheeled in. And then as soon as everything was over, the throne was wheeled out. And the person that was running the place asked me, what do we need to do so that the presence remains? You have to honor when the presence is there. If you're honoring people, your schedule, your timing, your clock, and your limitations, or praying for people, not honoring God. That was one of the issues there. Prophetic words and prophetic ministry was huge. Presence was there. We could feel it. But the honoring of that presence it was difficult for them. They wanted to honor a schedule. So there is a passive stewardship. Is there. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just not important, or it's not engaging. I can't engage with that because if we engage, we're going to be here for 6 hours and we got to go. We everybody wants lunch. So, we get into those routines. Now, I remind you, the son of Abinadab was Uzzah. Uzzah was raised in that household where he became familiar with that presence. It became common to have the presence of God. And I believe a lot of revivals, as we call them, or awakenings or whatever, died because it becomes familiar. We develop a doctrine. Now this is what we do. And since it's become so normal, we ignore the presence. So if we're going to host the Lord, he has to be the number one thing. So all of a sudden, you have these huge moves of God. Everybody's super excited. Every healings everywhere. And then that becomes, there's a healing room here. There's a this, and it's all about the people now. Then it becomes common. God is holy. There's a separation. There's a threshold between holy and common. And that's what you see now when King David becomes king, and he is just like, whoa, I am so excited that I need to go get that presence. I want to build my God. Sometimes I feel like that. And I have brought the presence in a human cart. Forgive me, Lord. I want that presence. I'm king. I'm bringing it home because the Lord says, don't build me a house. You have too much blood in your hand, but I'll let you bring it. But who brought it in a human cart? Uzzah, the son of Abinadab, is part of that group. David didn't inquire of the Lord. He's in his zealous desire of carrying the presence. Oh, there's a revival there. Let's all go and join. How many of us go and do trips to places so see if we can see the presence of God? But it's just common. It just become part of the routine, and you got to buy a ticket to get into the revival. Okay, so here we are now in the common movement of God. And a human cart, was built to carry this holy thing. So sad. Well, he stumbled. And the moment he shook, Uzzah, what did Uzzah do? He held the presence. You don't touch the presence of God. And again, I'm talking manifest presence. The house of Abinadab was the house where proximity didn't bring transformation, where familiarity had no reverence. And that became dangerous. The stewardship of God's presence requires an intentional investment, an honor and a fear of God that, I can't do that unless God desires that we do that. David became very angry, by the way, because he's like, I'm trying to bring you home, and look what happened. A man died. Hey, you just exalted Uzzah over the presence of God. And I know we have to have some mercy somewhere, but here is what happens. If somebody gets hurt in the presence of God, not hurt because God doesn't hurt people. Somebody gets offended in the presence of God. We always focus on the person that's offended before we ask, what did God do? Why did God allow that to happen? That's what happened to David. Uzzah became his focus and his anger. So now he needs a reshift. But who takes the presence? Now he goes to the house of Obed Edom. What a difference. Now we have a man who understood this thing has killed a man. He's going to be in my house. But by the way, he was in the house of King Saul had no presence for 40 years. Abinadab had the presence for 20 years. Uzzah died. His son died. No fruit. Obed-Edom had it for 3 months, 90 days, and had huge blessings. So now what we have is a shift in how he's stewarding the presence of God. Obed-Edom made a special place in his home, and he would do it day and night. And he was focused on that presence of God all the time. And because of that, now remember, he knew somebody died, so I better not play with this. Okay, so what you have here is an entire household gets blessed quickly and visibly. It's obvious to people because he had reverence and he honor, attracts favor. Your life will change because you honor the presence of God. By the way, Obed-Edom later on becomes a gatekeeper in the Tabernacle of David. We need a lot of Obed-Edoms. You know how many people, when we are in the thick of the presence, they don't like what's happening and they take it personal and start getting angry and saying things? There are a lot of people that will dishonor what God is doing because they're uncomfortable, because they're focusing on themselves. So here we go. We need to have honor, and that will bring an acceleration of blessing. And if we host the presence of God, it's a legacy. It brings a legacy. If you didn't honor, Uzzah died. When you don't honor presence, death comes. And could be a death of a ministry, could be death of life, could be death of, there's no fruit. So I'm being extreme here because I know we have Jesus and Jesus have taken care of everything. But the manifest presence of God can change a nation. And we're looking for change in our nation. I'm looking for change in California. And I believe the stewardship of the presence of God in the state of California is what's going to rescue us. It's not a new governor. So, and I'm getting personal because it is my state. But I want you to say that short-term obedience, the obedience of Obed-Edom, honoring the presence of God, will have a long-term reward. And he was rewarded. And he was put in the tabernacle of David. So sometimes your actions may not be seen by the public or may not be seen in a platform. They may not be acknowledged by the church at large. But God can see it. And he will reward you long term. I promise you that. Now, the fourth character that I wanted to discuss, we have King Saul, no presence. Abinadab, familiarity, traditions, didn't care. 20 years, no fruit. Obed-Edom, in 3 months, woo, an explosion of favor and legacy because he gets put in him and his children get to work into the honoring the presence of God. What a beauty that my children can honor God as well. Oh, it's beautiful. And he brings change because the children's children will be different because they have seen God and they have honored him and they have seen the favor of God in their lives. Now that requires separation. Take it from me. It requires saying no to so many things and telling people we don't do things like everybody else. And you're not popular, just so you know. It hurts because to carry the presence of God carries a lot of responsibility and it carries a weight and a demand that the world doesn't like. Last but not least, King David. Whoa, amazing. A man who loved God, who now has a passion and says, I got to prepare. I know Uzzah died. Lord, how do you want to do this? And he's reminded of what a good priesthood should do in the presence of God. It's intimate. The high priest went by himself into the Holy of Holies. It's intimate and it's amazing what happens when you're in the presence of God. But sometimes what we want gets in the way. Our services get in the way. Our agendas get in the way. People get in the way. Our healing gets in the way. But all that is already given to you in the presence of God, especially if you're a person safe. So here we have David desired to bring the ark to Jerusalem. And my goodness, he goes in a journey and he learns the conditions that are necessary to bring that ark into the place. And I believe that's what God's doing right now. We need to go into a journey to bring the presence of God into our regions, because when you do that, everything changes. We think it's going to be salvation of all the souls. That will come if the presence is there. It's a guarantee. Presence will bring salvation. But the problem is we put the souls above the presence of God, the people above the presence of God. So David corrected the course of how he attempted to bring the presence, and follows the protocol that God had given him, because we have to ask God how he wants to be handled. The ark is placed in the tabernacle of David, not in Jerusalem. God didn't want to go up in Jerusalem just yet. He goes into the city of David. There was water. By the way, I went to Israel and happened to go into the Hezekiah aqueduct, which is underground. If you've ever gone there, it's in the city of David. There is water underneath flowing. It's just beautiful. And that is I think it was called Hezekiah aqueduct, but it was in the city of David. And that's where the presence was placed while King David was king, until Solomon built the temple. And what you see here is a legacy. His son now gets to build the true house. That's a promise to me personally. I know my children will do great things. But I have, in the meantime, to have a praise and worship camp presence waiting for the Lord to move in our midst. And if we ask the Lord what he wants, he will do it. But we have to be intentional. We have to have the fear of the Lord and follow what God wants, not what our programs say we should do. Now, passion is a must. You must have the fear of the Lord. You need to have the right heart. You're not doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for money. You're not doing it for fame. You're not doing it because a lot of people are going to come. You're not doing it. Sometimes nobody comes. You need the right method, and you need a divine partnership. The partnership is here. We do ask for your support, but if God's not with us, there's no presence. So we need to be aligned with God. Some people want to help us, and the Lord says, don't take that. And we have to be okay. That's why I don't have like a donate button, because this is not about every person gives. There are people called to support us. So it's a little bit unorthodox. A lot of people don't like it, but it's divine partnership. What is God saying to you that he desires you to honor and steward him with what you have? Leadership is going to thrive, and the presence will be prioritized. So presence becomes the number one thing, is the one thing. Psalm 27, that's the theme of our camps. Captivated is a generation a completely possessed by the love of the Lord. And the one thing that matters is God's presence. So he's teaching them that that's what matters, that everything they do, what do they do with their careers? What do they do with their time? What do they do when they have a boyfriend? Who are they going to marry? You married only that person God put in your path for you. You don't go marry and then pray. No, we have to teach them how to honor God with their lives. So I would like to summarize by saying Saul ignored presence, and he brought spiritual dryness. He brings death. He died. Abinadab hosted without any honor. He had no fruit. Nobody died. Well, Uzzah died later out of familiarity. So yes, I guess he brought death too. But if you don't honor the presence of God, nothing happens. You will not be able to change a nation. Obed-Edom revered presence in his home, and he had huge, huge favor. A whole household changed, and I can speak of that myself. That's my testimony. And it was not a pastor or a church, it was God come in and helped us in the mess. Why he did it, I'm thankful. I am very grateful. I don't question it. Whatever he wants to do is okay. And David, he desired and he prepared for that presence, because now it's not just Obed-Edom for 3 months, the presence in Obed-Edom's house for 3 months. Now you prepare, and what you have is a national revival. You have a whole nation now in the presence of God. And I believe this is what we need. We want to change the world? We need the presence of God hosted properly. So we need to have a passion, a desire to honor God, to put God first, not the people. The land will recognize when God moves in. And my call to you is, how does God want you to steward him in your life, in your ministry, with your children? What is God asking you specifically? I asked last week. It's a challenge. What is he saying to you? What does he want you to do with what you have? And I am trying to encourage you. You need to honor the presence of God. You need to have reverence for, because he's holy. Yes, Jesus made a way for us to go boldly to the throne of grace. But when we want the manifest presence of God, remember, Abinadab had the presence and did not honor it. We have presence, and we are not acting in a lot of places as if God really matters. The people matter more. So I want to encourage you to ask the Lord how he wants to be honored, how he wants to be treated, what kind of music he wants to hear or not. What kind of action? How long should you stay there? If he shows up, are you going to interrupt it, or are you going to honor, because people are going to complain and maybe not give you any donations? Does God want you to write that book? Did you ask him? Yeah, it will give you income, but did God ask you to write it? Or it's just a good idea? Did God want you to have a podcast or not? Why? Whatever you do it unto the Lord. Whatever you steward it for him. And that is the beginning of being a people honoring God with everything we have. So we need to steward the presence of God in this season. I believe we are in the beginning of shifting. And I think some places will change. The services are going to change. Not all of them, because some people don't necessarily want change. Just because everything is changing in the world doesn't mean the people change. History will tell us that. So because of that, we need to know who are the ones that are going to steward the presence of God. Saul couldn't do it. He wanted to kill David. It bothered him, his passion. And by the way, I didn't mention the wife of David. I'm going to close with this. She got so upset when she saw him dance and kill all those bulls and be so bold. There will be a lot of them that are going to be upset on how you host the Lord. They're going to be offended and blame you for a bunch of things. So it will cost, but they stay barren. Michal was a barren woman, the only barren woman in the scriptures. But she couldn't handle. She was her daddy's girl, concerned of what people were going to say. It was all about how she was seen. The king. What were people going to say about the king now that he's taking his clothes off? So again, stewardship. What are you doing with what God gave you? And what is God saying he wants you to do to host him properly? It doesn't mean that you have to have a service or have to have a gathering or a meeting. It may be that you're just the source of supporting others, just like the book of Acts. The Macedonian, the Church of Antioch, they were people, they hosted, they prayed the will of God and send others out. This movement is very apostolic. So honoring the presence of God, stewardship of the presence of God is apostolic in this season. And I believe it will change everything. It's going to change how we worship. It's going to change how we raise our children. It's going to change how the nation behaves or nations behave. But it will depend on who you partner with and if they have the same heart to put God first. I hope that helped. And again, I want to thank you all for listening and watching this. I'm doing this out of an act of obedience, sometimes not the most popular subject, but I have to do it. It's voice activated, and the Lord asked me very early last year that I had to speak about it. Ask the Lord. And I bless you all, and I ask the Lord to create a community that will help us leave a legacy. I may never see it, but I know there's got to be people trained and equipped to raise a place that will honor God, or a system that will honor God more than anything else. I love you all. Thank you for watching. And until next time.